Afternoon, Tim. How you doing?
Afternoon, Shaba. I'm very good. I'm gearing up for Christmas. Yeah.
we
And got to get all my presents and get organized, but 2 weeks to go. So I'm excited. Yeah. How are
yeah,
you?
I'm very well. We're recording this for our Christmas special, so
Yes,
we both have. I have a tinge of red. You have a full red sweater, so that
that's
counts
it.
as a Christmas sweater. But this is going to be our Christmas special. So kick us
Yes.
off.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you in a second to share some experiences from you and people you know and clients, because that's what got us into this. We were thinking about money and Christmas and the various emotional strains and pressures that people have with their spending around Christmas and how people relate to that. So we want to talk about that. Hopefully people listening to this can find a way to maybe feel more relaxed around whatever their money choices are over Christmas, maybe less pressure or more comfortable spending money, or maybe more comfortable not spending money. And then we're going to dive into the world of gift giving. Links a little bit to our series on spending we did a month or so ago, but specifically, again, the pressures or the different thinking and emotions we get around Christmas gifts. And we're going to explore that. And then maybe if we got time with a bit of festive, life-centered cheer, I have a few thoughts to share about what are we really looking for with our spending and our gift giving at Christmas? If it's not about the number or the thing, what is it we're really wanting to exchange? So my hope with this podcast is it will add to people's Christmas cheer, that it will take any pressure off whether you're spending or not spending, or you think you've got money or not, and maybe give you a little drop of Christmas spirit, regardless of your gift and spending choices. That's my hope. So over to you, Shaba. What's kind of brought this topic up for you in your world?
Yeah. So I mean, the topic of planning for Christmas and planning for other sort of irregular expenditure. Well, not irregular expenditure because it is regular. It comes around every year, but
Right.
it doesn't come in the cadence of a monthly outgoing like your council tax or your food shopping. And it just amazes me that the number of people that I come into contact with that don't actually budget for Christmas when they
Mm,
know that it's
mm,
going to be a more expensive month, just naturally, because kids are off school. There's the present giving, there's the hosting and entertainment, there's more going out, that there could be more drinking, for certain groups of people. And it always strikes me that when you speak to people around their planning
mm,
for their outgoings, that they tend to just ignore the fact that they're going to have a massive spike in expenditure. Now,
mm,
most people who are living sort of paycheck to paycheck or pretty much spend what they earn, they don't try and sort of equalize the cost of Christmas over the rest of the year in order to make it more manageable. But instead, it's sort of like November might come round and suddenly they realize that they're buying presents and the pressure of gift giving and buying certain things for children. And what inevitably happens is that, the credit card comes out and that's used as a sort of, tap and forget, and I'll deal with it afterwards.
mm.
And that's why, we see this rise in sort of like debt in January and people really like freaking out about their finances, etc. So I've had a lot of conversations with people and I've seen this, quite a lot in my years as a financial advisor, that, you know, people just, they don't plan, but also get swept away in
Mm,
spending,
mm,
quite a lot of the time unconsciously.
mm,
But also there is also a very sort of self-imposed kind of, not, I wouldn't say, maybe is it guilt ridden, but I need to spend on my children or my loved ones to show how much I love them. And that could come at the expense of overstretching and getting into debt, which causes actually, more problems than it's worth, from an emotional standpoint. So that's
mm.
where I'm coming with it.
Well, let's dive in. As you speak, I feel really aware of kind of the complexity of what you're talking about. So already I'm thinking, oh, is this a two-parter? Will we spend our whole time talking about this and we do gift giving later? I don't know. We'll see. But I kind of want to acknowledge what you're talking about, because as you say, we all know Christmas is coming. right? If we celebrate, if we're in a country that celebrates, usually our money realities don't change massively. It's not like suddenly some people get a big bonus before Christmas, and of course some people do. There used to be a thing about having a Christmas jar. People used to put in 10 quid a week or whatever into a jar so that for Christmas they had money. I'm sure some people do budget for Christmas. I used to when I was married. We had Christmas as a line in our family budget. Now I'm not married, we don't. So make of that what you will. But yeah. And I also want to acknowledge Christmas is one of those things, really, like those big rites of passage, including birth and death. It's like it happens to us all, but our circumstances are different. So it brings up something kind of universal. And also, of course, every family will deal with it differently according to money. So yeah, there are some people, and let's acknowledge them, who they're very much with the pressure. There just isn't money to spend. There just isn't. And that can be very worrying time and full of pressures for all sorts of reasons, but there just isn't money available. And then I think there, the emotional pressure is just the fact that, well, we're not able to do things our kids might expect or other parts of society may do. But I think you're talking more about people where, let's say more the typical or the average person, there sort of is money, but there's no more money than usual. And yet there's this pressure to spend more. And I think what you're saying is what you've noticed, and tell me if I've got this right. Lots of people somehow just find the money on a credit card or from somewhere, spend it, partly because they want to, partly because they have to, and then a little bit suffer later or deal with the consequences later. Is that the sort of thing we're focusing on?
Yeah, there is, and that's the sort of the financial aspect or
Right.
the financial pressure or burden that I
Mm,
think Christmas brings. And there was the other part that we spoke about, which was the relationship side
mm,
and the family get-togethers and the feeling that quite a lot of people have to take on the burden of of hosting, which they do enjoy, but it's bloody
mm,
tiring, and
mm,
that in itself also sometimes brings about a sense of anxiety
mm,
around having to be the gracious host and
mm,
providing for family. Sometimes it goes smoothly, but sometimes it doesn't go so
mm,
smoothly as certain family dynamics are very complicated. And I don't know whether we're going to sort of touch upon that
mm,
today, but those were the sort of the two areas that
mm.
I think bring up tension around Christmas time.
Yeah. Okay. Super interesting. In this podcast, as you know, and regular listeners will know, we often use the story of a money centered approach or a money path, which is more focusing on the numbers, the quantities, the spreadsheets, and a life centered, where we're certainly through the work I share and Peter Koenig's work, invite people to think more about what's truly important in life, maybe the qualities or the relationships or the actual experience rather than the numbers. So one way we could go, but I don't think we will, but if we were another podcast, we might say, hey, everyone, here's how you set a family budget for Christmas. Next year, do a budget. Set up a little kind of space in your bank account or a little jar or somewhere, and you put money in, and that's your Christmas money. And that's great because that will alleviate some pressure. I think it's probably a really good idea. I'm sure a lot of people save for holidays, summer holidays, for example. So just as a practical tip, why not do that? What interests me is what you're saying is most people don't.
Well, I'd just caveat that. I mean, that there are people that do, and there are people that
Mm.
don't. I
Mhm.
think we're just sort of focusing on, and whether it's the majority that don't. That might be a very
We
broad
don't know.
assumption.
Yeah.
We don't know, but there is
No.
a large proportion of people that
Yeah.
actually don't.
Stick it on a card. So let's look at that. And I think what we often say in this podcast again is as with money, so in life. So what interests me here is not about how can we do a budget, etc. And we'll get into the pressure of gifts later or in the follow-up. There's something super interesting for me about almost wanting to have a little slice or part of the world where we, even for a week or two, we live in a fantasy and then we deal with the consequences, right? And the connections I'm making is where else at Christmas do I typically massively overextend myself and do what I know probably isn't good for me but regret it afterwards. Well, one is the amount of food and drink most of us have, right? And it's like a joke. We know we're going to do it. Most people are, I know I'm going to overeat and I'm
Yeah.
going to eat too much and drink too much and I'll eat load of shit and then I'll deal with it in the new year. I'll get healthy. So there's already a kind of a pattern there for me. And I'm not judging the pattern. Let's be curious about the pattern. There's something about, I know I'm going to head into a period where I'm going to literally overextend my waistline. I'm literally going to just expand. I'm going to eat more. I think this is true for most of us, right? Than I know. I'm going to eat things I wouldn't otherwise eat. I'm going to do things that I know aren't really good and healthy for me. But somehow I'm kind of going to enjoy giving myself permission.
Mm.
And then I'll pay for it, whether it's the hangover or just feeling a bit stuffed, or I'll deal with it in January. So what interests me, and we'll look at it with the money side, is this kind of sense, whether it's a pressure or even a desire, to have a period where I'm not just doing the usual thing, and I kind of consciously and kind of unconsciously expand or extend beyond what's good and deal with the consequences later. I'm thinking, what's the patterns here that we could helpfully point out to people that might help them navigate their Christmas? And I'll stick more with the money and the spending and the pressure, because we're not a family therapy podcast. Although we know, as you are with money, so you will be in relationship and in family. It strikes me there are three main drivers for me spending lots of money around Christmas, whether the money's on presents or going out or food or whatever it is. The first one, which is ideal, I'm writing them down so I don't forget them, is it's a conscious choice. And we've talked a lot on the podcast about to be truly free with money means I can spend, but I don't have to spend. I'm not driven or compelled to spend. Or I can not spend or not spend much, but I'm not compelled to. So I'm neither unconsciously tight and grabby, nor unconsciously pushing away or pressured. So, of course, what we would all wish, and if I may say so, I'm sure what, Jesus and the inspiration of Christmas would wish, is that whether we have money or not, we use our time, energy, money freely in service of whatever we think is important. Time with family, connection, love, having a good time. If we have money, or if we choose to, or if it's a conscious choice, maybe we spend lots, maybe we spend more than we have because we've consciously decided, I really want to do that. That really means something to me. And I'm aware I can deal with it later in the year, or I can pay it back. So on this podcast, as you know, we are neither for or against spending money. We're neither for or against saving money. We're not for or against investing money. We're for the conscious use of money as one resource in life to support life, right? So that's what we'd wish for everyone. And maybe we can say more in this podcast to help people with whatever money reality they have this Christmas to feel more free and to know they can have a wonderful Christmas with money and without money. And you can also have a shitty Christmas with money and without money, right? In the end, the money is not the thing that will determine your experience of Christmas. And we know that because all Christmas stories, back to the teachings of Jesus. I'm not a great Bible scholar, I'm not a Christian, but the teachings of Jesus, if they teach us anything, it's about things that are more important than money. If you look at some of the most famous Christmas stories, whether it's the Grinch, whose heart was 2 sizes too small, and then finally his heart expanded, or A Christmas Carol with Charles Dickens, all of them are reminding us that what's truly important in life and at Christmas is never about the money or the material thing. So the first way we might spend or not spend would be consciously, freely, neither restricted or pushed in service of what really matters. Love, relationship, a good time, fun, whatever. If what's super important for us is service and helping, we may decide to, give lots of money to charity at Christmas. Or we may decide to go and, volunteer at Christmas. But whatever we do, we're not compelled to do. It's a free choice.
And that's really important, because I almost feel like even with the marketing and the commerciality around Christmas, there's so much which is trying to put you in that state of compulsion and being reactionary to Christmas, rather than, it's almost like everything is stacked up against you from being conscious
Yes.
around this into period.
this is the great irony and paradox of Christmas. And we all know it and we live it. And I think this is a lot of a pressure that we feel in our lives, that we know deep down, we might say, because of all the stories and the movies. And the true meaning of Christmas is absolutely about non-material things, on consumption. We know that. We love the stories, we love the carols, we love all of that. And yet our modern industrial, very money-centered consumers will pile so much pressure on us all at every stage, advertising, stories, peers, expectation, to think that the way to a good Christmas is, buy loads of stuff, drink loads of stuff, eat loads of stuff, spend loads of money. So we might say Christmas is the most beautiful shared microcosm of the tension we're all living between the money part and the life
Mm.
part. And one of the reasons I think emotions get heightened for everybody at Christmas, albeit in a very unique way, depending on your circumstances, but everybody gets a bit stirred up at Christmas. It's almost because we're collectively entering that ancient story of what's really important here: life, relationship, love, connection, fun, laughter, what meaning, or stuff and money.
Yeah.
And so I think collectively we enter that, and most of us are just wrestling with that tension unconsciously. So we kind of love it and we kind of hate it, or we hoping for something but frustrated about something else, or a bit of it is we're driven by love, but a bit we're driven by pressure. So this is really
Mm.
the depth psychology, inner meaning of the Christmas story.
Yeah. It's all a bit too much to take. Right, let's move on to the second. So we've had conscious spending choices.
I was just thinking you could say that around the table. You could get people to inquire into the true Christmas story. So the other two stories, so ideally we're conscious. When we're not conscious, I think there's maybe two things going on, and they relate to this tension that I've described. The first is we're driven or pressured or propelled. So because I might think a million things like, I'm a rubbish dad if I don't buy big gifts, or I'm a failure if I can't, provide a case of wine for my household, or I'm a bad family member if I want my space and time, or actually, if I don't really want to spend money because things are tight this year, that means something about me, right? So we've talked about this as one of the archetypal gestures with money. If I think either, how can I put it? I overspend because I think not spending, rather than a free choice not to spend or not spend much, it means something bad about me. Okay. So this is where, if I'm not careful and if it's unconscious, I appear generous and giving, and I might appear abundant, but inwardly I feel anything but. Every time I'm spending, I feel like, not so
Mm.
good about it.
The credit card bill is now
Yeah,
racking up.
the credit card bill, what am I going to do in January? But I need to give everyone a good Christmas. And this can be for my own internal reasons, like I have something to prove or show, or I have some idea if I don't spend, again, it means I'm a unsuccessful man or a bad
Mm.
husband or a bad dad or boom, 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 boom. But also it's very much a peer and collective pressure because we're bombarded with images of what, quote, happy, smiling, successful
Mm.
people do at Christmas. So one trap to look out for is my spending coming, if you like, from my heart? Is it free? Is it really a choice? Or is it a pressure?
Yeah. And we've talked about that a lot, what are you projecting onto the money?
Yeah,
Or in this case, what are you projecting onto the spending? Like,
the spending and the
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Who are you getting to be, or who are you not being through the
Yeah,
spending, which is really
yeah,
important to do that sort of detective work and just
yeah,
question yourself as to, what's going on? Why am I doing this
yeah.
particular gesture?
Yeah. What do I think it would make me by
Yeah.
buying all this stuff? And also, what do I fear people would think, or how would I judge myself if I didn't? And I want to say, I realize it's complex, especially if you've got kids, because they're also swept up in their own
Mm.
projections and they're being socialized. So it's complex, but it's still a very good question. For example, if I think, well, I would be a bad dad if they didn't get this new whatever, but actually I'm not sure I can afford this new whatever. That's tricky in the
Mm.
society we live. But the mistake would be to think that me being a good dad is dependent on the money I spend. And then maybe it may be less available, and it may be less obvious, and it may actually require more courage. But there may be a beautiful thing I can do with my kids, for my kids, maybe all year rather than putting it all onto Christmas, that would be very much about being a good dad, that's nothing to do with the gift. And then if I have money, great, I get the gift. If I don't, but none of that means I'm a good dad or not a
Hmm.
good dad or anything.
There's almost something around like what's the greatest gift,
What's the greatest gift?
which I'm sure I think that's what you might be sort of coming on
Yeah.
to towards the end. So let's not spoil that. But okay, so should we move on to the next?
Yes. Yeah. So pressure would be one, and we can
Mm,
do detective work around pressure. And that could be pressure from my internal process collectively. And of course, those bounce off each other. The other thing, which I'm kind of interested from the start of our conversation, it's almost like a part of us really fancies a couple of weeks where we can just live in a bit of a fantasy and screw the consequences, right? So one is more like a pressure, and one is almost like
an escape.
an escape and a longing for escape. And that also needs to be listened to. So it's the middle of winter and it's the end of the year. And most of us have had whatever challenges we've had. And so, again, maybe without being conscious of it, there is a bit of me that just wants to take off the release valve and not
Yeah.
be sensible and not worry about, but because maybe I've been worrying about budgets all year and maybe I've been doing the sensible, dutiful thing all year. And there's a bit of me without realizing it that kind of longs to just eat too much that's not good for me and not care about my waistline and even not care about my budget for a while. So I would say that's not pressure. That's more like wanting, but unconsciously, a kind of little fantasy, maybe a little world where the rules don't apply or the pressures aren't there or the daily grind isn't there. And what I would say is there's nothing wrong with that, but it becomes very interesting if we make that conscious.
It's quite a similar parallel to maybe what I've felt sometimes, like going away on holiday,
Yes. Yes.
as well as wanting to experience the new environment and the beauty of the landscape
Mm.
and the cultures, etc. But there's also that wanting to escape from the
Yes.
grind of the day to day and just
Yes.
having that freedom and life that
Yes.
you tend to get from
Yes.
a period where you're almost detaching from
Yeah.
the matrix, so to speak. And Christmas, I think, maybe allows that without having to actually physically move location, but just the environment. And, everyone seems to be slowing down and off work, and it does have a different energy around it.
That's it. That's it. So what we could say there is, again, that's a perfectly good impulse, like the impulse in the second example, to be a good dad or to provide or whatever, be a good host. It's a beautiful impulse. The confusion is, I think the more I spend, the more that makes me a good dad or a good provider. That's the mistake. Same with here. Maybe there really is an impulse. Like I just want, to be, you had this lovely phrase, I want to connect with freedom and life. I want to step out of the everyday. I want those old rules not to apply. Maybe I want a bit of magic. Christmas is a magical time. We remember when we were kids. Now,
Mm,
that's a very positive and necessary human impulse. I would say all the world all year round, and particularly the money path, businesses, organizations, all of those things would be better and do better for the world if people brought a sense of freedom, magic, life, not just sticking with the old rules. I mean, rules are to be respected, but so is also periods of not having rules. When I overeat and overspend, it's like the bit of me that's watching myself, like the boss, the inner
yeah.
boss, as kind of, asleep on the sofa, and I get to be a bit naughty. So all of that impulse is maybe very healthy and very necessary. The point is, how could I live that with and without money? The mistake would be, oh, I'm going to blow a load of money because somehow that gives me permission or that signals that this is a time of magic and freedom and fun, right? But then I might regret it, or then I might think I only get that at Christmas.
Right.
If I have the money, great, spend your money in service of magic, great. But know that you don't have to spend money to have magic freedom. And you could think, well, what would be really fun? How do I break my routine? What do we do differently? And if we find ways to break the routine and have magic and vitality, why don't we do that all through the year? Why do we wait till this one period when all the adverts come on and we have this sort of funny guy we've invented with red and white big stuff? It's almost like too much gets put onto there. So I think, again, if the Christmas message or the more modern Christmas message tells us anything, maybe it's we're longing for magic, we're longing for stepping out of the rules, we're longing for celebration, we're longing for something. Well, if that's true, how do I connect with that in my life with and without money, and not just for a week in December?
Yeah, I've never really looked at it from that sort of angle, and
Yeah.
it's almost like everything's just less serious.
Yeah.
It's a bit more playful,
Yeah.
like, it's a bit more
Yeah.
fun,
Yeah.
there's a bit more energy, even for a culture that doesn't actually celebrate Christmas, but we're just through being in a country that celebrates
Yeah.
Christmas, you get caught up in it, and it's great
Yeah.
because it does allow you to spend more time with your family and
Yeah.
connect and,
Yeah.
play some board games and
Yeah.
watch Harry Potter marathons and
And
stuff
wear
like that.
silly hats in public and wear
Yeah.
bright. Christmas is a very interesting time because generally what happens is when we're young, we wear bright clothes with cartoon characters and flashing lights. And then as soon as we become grown up, we don't. We wear, frankly, pretty boring clothes.
Yeah.
And what's the one time of year that everybody says,
Christmas jumpers.
I can wear a silly clothes, I can wear silly socks, I can put antlers on my head, apart from, stag doos and things like that, which is a whole ridiculous thing in its own right. So actually, there is something about the magic. And also, it's not just family. I notice people just smile more. If you pull over at a
Yeah.
service station, you're driving somewhere, everyone's just a bit more happy, a bit more warm. It's about tidings of comfort and joy. Now, um, again, nothing wrong with spending money if it's conscious. If I've got it and I choose to, great. But that's not what guarantees me either being a good parent, good dad, whatever, or that I have magic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can all think of many examples of people who spend lots of money at Christmas and the atmosphere does not feel magical. And examples of people who, for whatever reason, don't spend much, but because of the way they are or how they organize the time or what they choose to do, they get that feeling of difference and magic and warmth. And I think that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, and also there are people that definitely feel freer and more giving and have more life energy at Christmas, and it's a shame that it takes a kind of imposed festival or period of time where you're given permission
Yeah.
to feel like that, and you just can't bring that same feeling, energy and life giving generosity or whatever into the rest of the year.
But we could.
We could, yeah.
And
But
this
it
is
feels like
about
it's not available. It feels
yes,
like it's not available.
yes, yes. So that might be, in a way, the third thing is we spend money, we overextend, we buy things we wouldn't. There's a certain carefreeness and a desire to invest in the magic, and that's okay if you've got the money. But yeah, what would it be like to do that throughout the year with and without money? I think it would be very interesting. What would it be like to, I don't mean wear silly sweaters, although you could, but have that attitude of warmth, goodwill to all men, maybe generosity, not taking things quite as seriously. I think that would be a lovely quality to extend through the year.
So where do we sort of head from here, Tim? Just
Well,
conscious of
maybe for
time and
today, yeah, we were going to talk about the true meaning of a gift, and yeah, maybe I just say a little bit about that, and then we recap because I think we've really touched into this already. So if I summarize, we've said often, like most of our money behavior, what we do with money around Christmas is not conscious, and that's always the problem. If we want to do detective work, which is this process of becoming more conscious. Two big patterns are, am I feeling pressured or driven to spend more than I feel is really okay for me? Just realize the money you spend doesn't make you what you think, but also not spending it doesn't make you what you think. Or am I kind of investing kind of consciously, but kind of getting swept up in the money fuels the fantasy of a time of carefreeness, fun, fantasy. And if that's the case, realize you can have that without the money. And then I guess I would end with something. I've written a blog on this some years ago, so we'll link to that in the show notes. I got very fascinated that gold was one of the gifts. I got fascinated in the three gifts of the wise men, the magi to the baby Jesus. And I looked into gold and the meaning of gold. And then I thought, why is gold so precious? I'm gonna read something actually. This is a lovely piece from a book I've quoted before. In fact, it's from Jacob Needleman.
who we started the podcast off with,
Exactly.
Jacob Needleman.
We started
Wow.
with Jacob Needleman and this phrase, the problem of money. And he writes this wonderful book about money. And one thing that happens to him in this book is one of his students who's very wealthy actually presents him with a briefcase full of gold, actually
Okay.
gives him a briefcase full of, or offers him. And Needleman has this very strong visceral response to gold. And I got very interested in gold. So I want to read this, and then I want to read what the mythologist Joseph Campbell says about the myth of gold. And then I want to suggest this is really the true gift we can give each other. I don't mean gold, although, feel free.
Yeah.
But it's like, what does gold mean? He says, the radiance of the gold blazed into my brain, and a powerful lightning bolt of electricity snaked down the length of my torso, igniting everything in its path, especially in the region of my solar plexus and genital. My legs started trembling as though filled with nervous little sparrows. My breathing became rough and coarse like the panting of a hungry wolf. So notice how in the body his response to this briefcase of gold was. And one of the things you and I talk about a lot with this work is the life path, and the real meaning of money is like more in our body. It's not our stories about it. And then he says, I saw with unmistakable clarity where money resided in my being. I saw how deep down it was, deep down in my body, not so far from where the impulses of sex and survival lived. So I find that fascinating. It's a whole podcast, but briefly, gold kind of ignited energetically or physiologically for him something really in the lower part of his body, kind of around the sex organs, the navel, the solar plexus, kind of the bottom half of the body. And energetically, this is a lot associated in holistic systems of healing with our creative power, our groundedness, our kind of power to be and do and be ourselves in the world. Now, of course, we often think money gives us the power or the permission to express ourselves or be ourselves or live the life we want. And what Jacob Needleman's saying is he felt with the gold something ignite here. Of course, the gold's just in a briefcase. Let me just go on then to read what Joseph Campbell says. Joseph Campbell's an amazing mythologist. He studied all the myths of different systems, and he's looking for patterns. And he's also very inspired by the work of Jung, who also looks at these deep archetypal patterns. And this is what Joseph Campbell says about gold. Where are we? Yeah. Well, actually, he's talking about dragons here. He says, dragons hoard our gold. They sit on huge piles of it, yet they can do nothing with the gold they guard. So in mythology, dragons are these big, powerful beasts, but they sit on gold. They can't spend it. They can't do anything, but they cherish it. And he says he can't make use of the gold, the dragon. He just guards it. There is no vitality of experience. Gold is the vitality of life. So I've gone a bit philosophical, but it's Christmas, and I hope that's okay. And so I think when the wise men present gold to Jesus, they're not giving him an investment for his pension or the future. They're presenting, I think, a symbol of something that's truly precious, that's orange and yellow and connects with kind of this abdominal region, our creative power, and is a symbol for the vitality, our life force, the vitality of our life. And maybe they're giving it to him both to support his own life force, and maybe they recognize he was an unusual being who would be able to really live from his own life force with and without money.
Okay. I don't know if I get the whole gold thing. For me, it was almost like that the gold represents like an abundance of wealth.
Wealth, meaning what?
As in like financial security, or the ability to use the gold or any type of wealth, for example, purchasing or whatever it could be translated into.
Well, that's what we think today. It's an asset, right?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
like
what
an
you're
asset.
saying?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it as, okay, like Jacob Needleman's been given this, like, well, let's just say a huge amount of money.
Yes.
And it's caused a physical reaction in him because of the possibility that all of that money brings to life, in terms of just like maybe winning the lottery. I don't know, let's say you just got a phone call saying, I've won the lottery. I can imagine like that bolt of lightning and like everything just rushing through you because of the immense possibility now that you have it at your fingertips.
Yes. So we'll try and make this brief. Maybe people have questions. We do a whole other podcast on the mythology of gold. Yes, and that's the projection.
Right.
Before I get given the gold, I do not experience myself
Yeah.
as having immense possibility. Before I win the lottery, I believe myself to be someone who doesn't have the power to do whatever I like. As soon as I get the lottery ticket or the gold, not only do I think I can, but I feel in my body this turbocharged
Yeah.
vitality. I feel this energy.
Mm.
Now, my suggestion in line with this podcast is that energy is always ours. We don't need a briefcase of gold. We don't need a winning lottery ticket to access this kind of furnace, fire in our belly, life
Right.
force. But we make the mistake, which we all do, of believing that I can't have that true creative power, force, possibility without the money. That's
Right.
just a suggestion. So my suggestion coming back, no one's going to be giving their family briefcase of gold. But I just wonder if with our spending on Christmas, as long as it's free, we spend or don't spend, but maybe the real gift we can give is two things. One is we can give of ourselves as much as we can from our vitality. So whatever that means, to live your life fully, to know that you do have that power, or to do whatever it is in life you think you would do if you won the lottery or had the briefcase
Yeah.
of gold. To live that now is the greatest gift to yourself, the world, and your family. And to offer whatever to your family would help them in any way believe that about themselves. Love, unconditional appreciation, encouragement, support, belief in their own power. And as a family, to create whatever situations you can where you can all just really be yourselves and know that you are safe and appreciated and free. I think those things all help connect people with their own unique life force and life energy. That's the best possible gift to go through life with for Christmas. It's not just for Christmas, like a dog. Your life force is for life, not just for Christmas. And what a great gift to give. It's just much easier to go on Amazon and buy a Lego Arsenal Stadium.
Which sounds fantastic, to be
Which
honest.
sounds fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with it. And it's a great gift. But the most priceless gift is to live your life force as fully as you can and do the work to free that up and to do whatever you can to support others. And then they are truly rich and powerful and full of possibility, with and without money, with and without spending a lot at Christmas, etc. So that it was a bit circuitous, but that's what that means to me, the myth of gold.
I'm glad we got to that point. Tim, have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Enjoy. Have fun.